let's talk. We're going to talk about something today that I don't think most people think about. And that's SCA resumes. I know. Half of you are like, wait, what? We have to keep a resume? Calm down. Just calm down. Not everyone in the SCA needs to keep a resume. But I'm going to suggest that you keep a resume. Now, why? Well, hold off on why for a second. Let's talk about what a resume is. And it's really no secret. A resume is a document chronicling all of your accomplishments in the society. I have a SCA resume. It talks about all the offices I've held, talks about all of my championships, it talks about all of my, mine has all of the written works that I've published within the society. I've got a number of, let's call them textbooks for our purposes here. Offices I've held, deputyships I've held. It has the full list of all my awards. It has all of my affiliations, what households I'm part of, what groups I am part of, where I have pretty much done anything. It lists all the events I have event stewarded or deputy stewarded to. It lists all of my major leadership roles. I mean, it's a pretty itemized breakdown. And so the next question that a lot of people ask is, why do you need a resume for all that? Well, there's two reasons. Let me give you the immediate reason first, then we're going to talk about the big one. So, the immediate reason, because it won't take long before you start forgetting stuff. I was the Minister of Arts and Sciences for the province of Moonshadow for 15 months. Now, my term was 2 years, and I'll say up front, I had to step down because my job switched my schedule, and I could no longer attend meetings for about, I think it was almost 6 months. So I talked to the Seneschal, and it was decided just a good time to step down, open the office for application. But I couldn't tell you what year or years that office overlapped. It was just a long time ago. I remember a lot of what I did. I remember a lot of who I worked with. I remember a lot of the classes I organized. I couldn't tell you what year it was, what months it was. I have that on my resume. And there have been times where people have asked, did you ever hold this office? And I'm able to pull it up and go, yeah, from this month to this month, this year to this year. I have to go look up all of the papers and all of the documents I've written for the SCA for general use. I don't have them memorized. If you were to walk up to me and ask me, have you written a paper on this? I'd have to go look it up because I've written a lot. And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying it's a lot of documents. The resume has that list. All you have to do is play 4 or 5 years, and I guarantee you're not going to be able to rattle off the top of your head all the offices you've held or all the deputyships you held and all the competitions that you've entered. Never mind, it doesn't matter if you won or lost, but how many competitions have you entered? Even if it's only a handful, you're going to be like, was that December or March? Which year was that? These things happen. So now all of this pre-assumes that you're going to need a complete chronicle of all of the important things you've done in the SCA. Why would you need this chronicle? This isn't a job. There's not applications. You don't plan on submitting an application for board of directors or whatever. Why would you need this? Okay. Let me start from the top and work my way down. If now or any time in the future you decide that peerage of any sort is in your future, that you want to strive to become a Pelican, a Laurel, a Master of Defense, a Knight, a Master in Arms, whatever, it will be in your absolute best interest to have an up-to-date resume available. And I will tell you from first-hand conversation with a number of peers that if you have a peer of your own, if you are a student to a peer, that resume is a tool they can use to help educate you and advocate for you in the circle. Also, that resume is something the circle can use to evaluate you and your candidacy. I know for a fact that I know for a fact that members of various circles have pulled up, in Onsteora at least, have pulled up certain candidates' wiki pages, our Onsteora History Wiki. Because the wiki page can be, if you maintain it that way, a effective resume. It can have all of the same information on it that a SCA resume would. And they will pull it up on their smartphone right there in the middle of the circle and go down the list and look at all of the things that you have accomplished. And I know that conversation takes place, and I know it takes place on a regular basis. I have heard Pelicans and Laurels and Masters of Defense say to me, they obviously haven't given me any details, they haven't said who the candidate was, but they have absolutely said that they have used their electronic device to look up either a resume, if they had a link to it, or the individual's wiki page on Onsteora, so that they could have a well-rounded summary of everything this individual has done. Now, what about the rest of you? I'm not planning on being a peer. That's not on my future. Why would I want to talk about that? It's okay. Believe me, it is absolutely okay. I've been playing a quarter century, and I can say probably the first half of that, I not only was not looking towards peerage, but I was staying away from that conversation actively. And for a lot of reasons, and yes, my situation has changed, but that doesn't invalidate my reasons at the time, and it doesn't invalidate your position now. Not everyone in the SCA is looking to become a peer, and that's okay. So you don't want to be a peer. Why do you need a resume? All right. I'm just going to go down this list because this is all stuff that, without ever discussing peerage, it's a good idea to have that resume. First, are you going to apply to any offices? Yeah. When you apply, it will probably be a good idea to list off all of the other offices you've held, all of the other positions that you've held, all of the other things you've done. Especially if you really want that office. If you really, really feel like you can do good in that office and there's someone else applying, let's just call it what it is. This is a competitive situation now. You need to prove that your candidacy is the best one on the table. I'm not saying you need to badmouth anyone else. I'm not saying anyone else is weak, but if there are 2 or 3 people applying for one job, then only one's going to get it. And if you want it, you got to prove you're the best candidate for the job, and that resume is going to give you the information to include on the application to do that. And like I said, you're not going to remember everything off the top of your head. You know, trust me, the one thing you don't want to do while you're filling out an officer application is yell across the room going, "Honey, do you remember when I was the Deputy Minister of Arts and Sciences? Because I can't remember that." You'll never get the months right. You will never get the months right. So, are you ever going to apply for an office? Yeah, you probably want to have your resume of all the deputyships and all of the classes you've taken and all of the things you've done, because all of those speak to character and qualifications and skills, and you want You want to have all those there so that when you apply, you have the strongest possible presentation of how good a candidate you um, are you ever going to be a student? Now, that's not a sideways way of saying, do you or do you ever plan on being a peer? Because yes, all students are, a squire, a protege, a apprentice, and a they're not calling them provost anymore, but a student to a master of defense. These are all forms of studentship. But that's not the only studentship. You may just want to learn a skill, and you will be a student. You will probably want to be able to show your teacher, if it's a student relationship. If this is someone you're going to be visiting with a lot, you probably want to be able to show them, here's what I've done. And that's not a bragging thing. Anyone who's going to teach you something, if they're worth their salt, they're going to want to have a working idea of what they're starting with, what you already know, what you may need work on. So that is a not insignificant bit of information that may be relevant to them. And last but not least, mentorship. Now, I know that sounds really, really weird. What does mentorship have to do with a resume? Trust me, being able to pull up a resume and go over all of the things you have done is an important and valuable building block in a mentorship situation. Whoever it is who is mentoring you will be able to go through that same list with you, and they'll be able to recall what you did, and they'll be able to recall the things that you contributed and maybe some of the things that you need to work on. That, again, you're not going to remember all the details off the top of your head. I don't think anyone's memory is that good. But having that document, having that factual chronicle there, if you ever enter into a mentorship or menteeship relationship, that can be, depending on who your mentor is, a valuable tool to help guide your education. And I'm saying that from firsthand experience if you hadn't figured it out already. So I've said you should have an SCA resume. Where do you put one? How do you create one? You know something? Just pull up a Google document, and right now just jot down all the stuff that you've done. If it's your first year, it's probably not going to be a very long list, and that's okay. There's such a thing as too much, especially your first year. Are you an authorized thrown weapons marshal, authorized archery marshal? A lot of first-year players in our area actually did that very early on because we needed the help, and they stepped up. Have you run any part of an event? Jot that down. Jot the month or the day or the event down. Are you currently a deputy? Are you currently an officer? Jot that down. Is it of any use to you right now? No, but trust me, history is one of those things that is always better when there's a written chronicle of it. Now, 10 years from now, you haven't applied for an office, you're having the time of your life, you love the SCA, and you never need the resume. So why did you do all this? Okay, I'll admit, in that scenario, writing a resume was probably a waste of your time, and I wholeheartedly apologize in advance. But really, realistically, what did I do? Wasted maybe 2 hours a month, the most. More like 4 hours a year, every 6 months for you to keep that thing up to date. And preparation for something you would never need. Okay, that's fair. It's kind of like putting on a seatbelt. We all pray we never need it, but we're glad when we have it. But for a lot of you, especially a lot of you early on guys, no, you don't need a resume right now. It's pointless right now, and that's okay. It's first, second, third year in. But what happens when a knight walks up to you and says, "Hey, I really enjoy practicing with you. Have you ever considered, maybe taking a red belt?" Or a laurel walks up to you and says, "I really, really like the work you're doing. Have you ever considered becoming an apprentice?" Or what happens when a pelican walks up to you and says, "You've got a lot of potential and I really like the work you're doing. Have you ever considered being a protege?" I don't know how you're going to answer those questions. I don't know. I don't know what your life circumstance is going to be like. I know that when I was hit with that question, I about had a heart attack. I about fell over. And then when I did sit down to have a further conversation, one of the first things my pelican asked me was, "So let's know a little bit more about your past history." He and I had worked together for about 5 years at that point, but he wanted to know everything the first 15 years before that. And I pulled out my smartphone and said, "Well, here, let me share this with you," because I couldn't remember everything on there. I wasn't ready. I wasn't asking. I wasn't looking to become a protege. But an outside force came to me and said, "Have you ever considered?" And I had a resume ready. At the end of the day, as a historian through all sorts of history, medieval, 20th century, Renaissance, Roman, Greek, I'm even now getting into some of the Babylonian and kind of scratching the surface on some of the Chinese stuff. Do I really need to move to Asia? But that's another story. Documentation. I'm dead serious, guys. There is no greater loss than not being able to remember your own accomplishments. And you will forget them, especially if you've been playing a bunch of years. You're not going to remember how long you were in an office or which event was that I autocrated. You'd be surprised how easy it is to forget, especially if everything went smoothly. If everything goes according to plan, nobody remembers who ran it. But if something goes sideways, everyone remembers who ran it. And we all want the event to go smoothly. So when you autocrat a successful event, 10 years later, it's like, what event did I autocrat? I don't remember. What year was that? A chronicle is always a good idea. Will you need it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I guarantee you, when the question comes up and you need it, you're not going to regret having it already made. And I really doubt you're going to regret making one, even if 15 years from now you never need it. That's my take on it. I know, it's not sexy, it's not flashy, it's not history, but it's an important part of the society. Seriously. It's something that I really encourage people to look into, and I really encourage people to start doing. So, till next time, I'll see you at the next event. Goodbye. God bless.